from the land of tech jobs. Joining us is Silicon Valley Congressman Khanna in studio. Been in before, and it's always good to have anyone in studio, but particularly
it's
you.
It's a low bar. I appreciate it.
What are you doing? Can you explain the rationale and some of the specifics?
Well, since I've been in Congress, I've been focused on this idea that we hollowed out our manufacturing base. For 40 years, we allowed jobs to move offshore. 70,000 factories closed in this country between 2000 and 2010. We need a manufacturing renaissance. We can do that with some of the policies of chips and science, IRA, technology. And I want to go to some of these factory towns and see, is it actually making a difference? What's happening in these communities? How do we restore our manufacturing?
We were actually just talking about that with Eunice and others, that globalization is here to stay, and that you can explain what happened to a lot of the jobs just based on comparative advantage and what happens in a global economy. Do we want to reverse that? Will it be economically productive to not go where you can do things much more cheaply?
Well, we want to rebalance it. I mean, during the pandemic, we realized we didn't make masks in America. Our cars were lying vacant because we didn't have semiconductors. We didn't make enough baby formula or Tylenol. And there's going to be a huge global demand for steel, for aluminum. China's got an inverted fertility curve because of the one China policy. Germany's fertility is low. So there's a huge opportunity for America to become the workshop of the world again and to revitalize these factory towns.
So how do we do it by incentivizing the private sector versus subsidizing government-favored industries?
Well, what we need is a partnership. We need the private sector involved, and they need to have the market
involved.
They need to lead it. They need to lead it. But here's the reality. They can't make the investments in scaling, and they can't compete against other countries if they don't have some assistance from the government. The government purchasing Made in America projects, the government helping finance large-scale factories. I mean, you look at a town like Canton, North Carolina, right? The paper mill just shut down. 4,400 person town, 900 people work at that paper mill. And you're saying, what can we do? Well, in Wisconsin, there's a paper mill making corrugated paper for Amazon boxes. Why can't we do that in a place like North Carolina? We should have a plan, 100 new factories, 100 small towns. We can do that with the private sector working with government and business leaders.
My son is a moderate. He thinks I'm crazy. But I said you were coming in, and I said we had a potential ticket, either a Joe Rowe or a Roe Joe, if I can move you a little bit more to the center.
And he vetoed it?
He called you a Bernie bro.
Well, look, Bernie, I agree with Bernie on having health care for everyone, making sure that people can actually afford, if you're working a 40-hour week, do you think that someone should be able to afford to support their family without food stamps? I mean, those are basic policies. But I also believe in innovation, in technology, in the private sector. So
some of these things are some of the stuff you just said is mutually exclusive to what Bernie believes in.
Well, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think it's
He's not a capitalist. He's a democratic socialist.
Well, I call myself a progressive capitalist. There I disagree or have a difference of opinion. But look, you know, Joe, you'll keep me in line when I'm working for you.
We haven't decided who's on the top of the ticket. That's a problem.
Is this, I mean, being so far outside your district, looking at things nationally, is this part of a plan to run for higher office at some point?
No, it's a part of a plan to help make the case for what Joe Biden's policies are. I mean, we have had a manufacturing boom in this country. We have had manufacturing capacity up, manufacturing construction up. But I don't think people argue in statistics. Somehow that message is not getting through. So what I want to do is go to these towns and say, is there actually a difference in these actual communities? People who had been laid off were angry. Right. Do they feel a difference? Or are all the battery plants and semiconductor plants just going to places like Columbus and not really hitting the small towns and factory towns?
Well, we had Steve Case on yesterday, and as you know, Revolution is all about rise above the rest and trying to make sure that there are technology jobs that exist outside of places like Silicon Valley and New York City. What you're doing is pretty different, though. This is more about manufacturing itself and not necessarily technology jobs being outside some of these places.
We've done both. So I'm a huge fan of Steve Case's. I done a partnership tour with Google a couple of months ago about bringing new AI jobs, and we actually set them up in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, in South Carolina. But I think that there is a confluence between manufacturing and tech. The modern factories are going to require technology jobs. Yes, they're going to require blue-collar jobs as well. So in my view, it's technology, AI, data management that can allow for the productivity advancements to have the modern factories.
You just said you were here supporting President Biden. I was just so curious. Did you see the governor of your state, Gavin Newsom, with Sean Hannity, discussing the debt ceiling deal, where he said that he thought that President Biden had rolled Kevin McCarthy, was the phrase, rolled. I think he said he cleaned his clock. Do you believe that's the case?
I wouldn't characterize it that way. I believe the president did the best he could under the circumstances, but there were aspects of the deal that I didn't like. I mean, the fact that you now have the Mountain Valley Pipeline being green-lighted, the fact that 50-year-old women are not going to be able to get food assistance at a time of the slowing down of the economy. I mean, I think the president did the best in the circumstances, but I wouldn't describe it as that he cleaned Kevin McCarthy's clock.
I couldn't get you on camera to admit that the president should negotiate, but now you're glad he did, and you're glad we got this done in hindsight. Well,
my view was that the president should have just said, Treasury, go pay. I mean, it's a manufactured crisis. We've never defaulted on our debt. Right. The previous Congresses have been able to have said to the president, you have to spend this money. He could have just said to Treasury, go pay, and I don't think Jerome Powell would have failed to clear those checks.
I have mixed feelings about that, too, because you're right. The reason that that we did all that was because a bunch of Democrats got elected. So if Republicans don't want to pay for what's already happened, then they need to win some elections, is the way that you prevent, if you think the spending is frivolous or it's too much, well, stop the spending before it happens. After it happens, it's kind of a moot point. But
hold on, you just said that the spending was the fault of the Democrats?
I just said that over the past couple of years, what we just paid for.
Right.
Was the last 2 years we paid for all the things we spent over the last couple. Are you just going to make the insipid point that Trump spent money too with his tax cuts? Is that where you?
No,
I
was going to make the insipid point that you can look at deficits.
But you admit it's insipid.
No, I
understand. I got it. I know.
The factual point that Republicans under Republican presidents historically, as you know. Deficits have gone up.
I know. Good point. I wanted to mention to you.
I don't even have to chime in here.
What first-time viewer? You know, it's not rise above the rest. That rise above was our stupid saying that we came up with.
Rise of the rest.
It's rise of the rest. You mix the two. I heard that and I thought, oh my God.
What Steve Case is doing is brilliant.
It is.
Because you're going to have 25 million digital jobs in this country. Many of them aren't going to require a college degree. That's what people don't realize with this AI stuff. It's actually going to make it more accessible. You don't need to know math and computer programming. And Steve Case is saying, don't have all those jobs in New York and Silicon Valley. Have them in Ohio.
Are you okay with people not coming back to work in places like your district?
Well, no, I think that there has to be a hybrid ability to come back some days and also to work remotely some days. But it's a challenge.
You can't live in Idaho if you got to come back 3 days a week.
Well, I think that's not bad for the country, that we're spreading out the technology opportunities. The challenge in my district, I mean, candidly, or north of my district in San Francisco, we've got to get some of the crime under control. Right. We've got to get the homelessness under control.
But isn't the crime piece a law piece?
Yeah.
A law and order piece? That's missing in your state?
I don't know if it's missing in the state, but we have to do a better job of saying if you go break into a Walgreens, there have to be consequences. Now, I don't think that means you lock someone up for 10 years and destroy their lives, but it also doesn't mean that you just let them go without consequences. And so the pendulum has swung too far on one side, and we have to have common sense.
It also means that you can't have somebody like a Facebook Marketplace taking stolen goods and basically fencing the operation and letting people sell things easily there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we
Amazon, Facebook, they've all kind of contributed to this by not policing the stuff that they're selling. We just spoke with the Home Depot CEO this week, and he said just that you can now go online in any of these places. And, you know, those are things that if they were for sale in a Home Depot would be in big trouble. How come they're not responsible for it?
Well, there should be they shouldn't be able to take intellectual property or
stolen goods like straight out of Home Depot or any of these other places.
Well, that's why
there's organized crime that goes into these stores.
There's laws against stealing cars, but we won't chase them anymore.
Well, we should have an enforcement. I don't know what percentage of Amazon goods are stolen goods, but obviously we should be enforcing the rule of law. But just on Silicon Valley, this idea that there's some mass exodus, I just want people to come to the Valley and talk to folks there. They are going to be leading the AI revolution. There are new startups every day that are coming out in Silicon Valley. It's a booming place. Now, the bigger challenge is not that there's a mass exodus in Silicon Valley. The bigger challenge is AI going to be helping other parts of the country, or is all the new concentration of wealth going to remain in Silicon Valley?
You must be excited, though, about AI, but it's going to, we're all doomed, obviously. What was the other? Oh, and then crypto.
They can't take your job, Joe. Don't worry about it.
I agree with you.
Humor, you got too much sports knowledge.
I agree with you. I think, and if we do eventually start running things, we got to do something with crypto. You ready to do something regulatory-wise? You want to do it before we're in the Oval Office, or are you going to get Congress to move its focus?
Well, we need to do something, and we need to have sensible regulatory reform. I mean, we've got to recognize that there are values, in my view, to blockchain.
Your friend Larry Fink now wants an ETF. Well, we got to go. They're yelling. We got to go. All right, we still don't know. Rojo, Joe Rowe, one or the other. We'll be right back.